A motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, any second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any questions? Any further discussion? Okay, we'll move on. We've had we had a really good meeting last month, and I think Jim, your team did an excellent job of giving us some good feedback and giving us some direction. So I don't really have anything new other than our board retreat is around the corner, March 23rd, I think it is, or 25th. The Monday,
23rd.
So I'm really interested in what we have to put before us today that we could consider for the board meeting. So with that, I'll just turn it over to you, Jim, for your comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have been busy and things are coming together. We've got both feet on the accelerator, moving as fast as we can. Let me give you just a few updates, just to help you understand process and what's been accomplished with the campus. I hosted 3 town hall meetings over the last 2 weeks, have met with key governance groups, including the Faculty Senate Steering Committee, the Employee Advisory Committee, the Academic Council, the Alumni Association Board, to field their questions and get their feedback as key stakeholders. I'll also be meeting with the Student Senate tomorrow evening, so I think we will have covered many of those key internal bases. I have to tell you the discussions have been very engaging. I've appreciated the feedback from those attended. The alumni group, which can be kind of the protector of the faith and kind of a don't change too much about the place I love, frankly, really lit up the group. They were very excited about the direction. I had almost a dozen of them come up to me at the following evening at the Alumni Awards event, really pledging support. Some of the key takeaways, there seems to be terrific support around increasing student housing just unilaterally. I've been talking more and more about trying to produce other revenue streams so that we can make sure we've got resources to compensate faculty and staff. An example of that is if we have growth in out-of-state enrollment, I've directed Tawana to come up with a plan that would allow us to build a compensation pool. We're seeing a lot of, and that's become a key retention issue for us, particularly as we bring new faculty and staff on. They tend to make a little bit more, and you have these pretty severe compressions. And we also have to do some things at the frontline level. So there's been really good support. They understand that the university is only as good as its people. Universal support over the Madison Promise, as this is getting further and further out, and it's all aspects of it. But the 2 guarantees, we're getting tremendous external support, as you might expect. Some very thoughtful reactions from members who are serving on external people who are serving on campus committees and therefore getting a little bit closer view of that. Some of the other area we're getting feedback around is lowering the acceptance rate. Some people weren't fully understanding what that was. That the goal is obviously to drive applications up, but try to be really careful about who we select, and then more importantly, making sure we can do better with our yield, which will allow us to lower our acceptance rate. That does a couple things. First of all, it makes sure that the students who are admitted to JMU have the capacity and ability to do the work. We want to make sure that we continue to increase standards and have high expectations for students, and a lower acceptance rate often is an indicator of our ability to do that. Frankly, it's also one of the key things that prospective students look at when they're trying to evaluate the quality of it. And pretty much all of the big national ranking services point to that as one indication of quality. As you've heard me joke, maybe at the stewardship lunch, most of the feedback, particularly externally, but internally to some extent as well, go bigger, go faster, go bolder. And I've warned them that's kind of a dangerous thing to say to me. We have also been getting electronic responses. We received over 100 responses last week as we've been circulating the draft plan. The team is pulling all of that feedback together, trying to go through, and we're doing some cutting some areas, adding some others, but a lot of it's this continual work of shaping it. So I don't think any of it will be surprise to the Board of Visitors by the time they get it. Some of the key things that we continue to put in front of them, and I'm asking our marketing communications department to start shaping what perspective pieces would look like. So we have a better sense, and the board has a better sense of how we will talk about it. Some of those key pieces is how does this plan differentiate us from the pack, everybody else that's out there. We believe that particularly the Madison Promise will be one of those things that differentiates us. Some of the questions that we've also heard is how can different stakeholders engage in the plan? Again, we decided not to do a plan that covers absolutely everything the university does, but rather we're trying to be focused and moving these key benchmarks and having a big impact on student outcomes. Some of the feedback says, help me understand if I'm a custodian, or help me understand if my area isn't mentioned explicitly in the plan. And so we're going to be putting together some materials that help rank and file faculty and staff understand each of their roles can play a big impact in continuing the culture of JMU, how they can be involved in retention, opportunities for mentorship, and again, the whole student work component that can touch almost every angle of the institution. So I think that has been extraordinarily good feedback. Finally, we're asking people if our vision is big enough, that 2040 vision as we move through it. In terms of time frame, the vision team's final reports are due to my office on Friday. So we are in the final week where we're asking for all of the work of the 7 vision teams, and I think there's probably many subgroups coming out of that to funnel up all of that to us. I'm then going to sit down with the division heads, and we will be grinding through the recommendations, making adjustments, and putting it into as solid as a draft as possible. So by the time we're at the board retreat, you will have is something as close to a final draft. It isn't a final draft. It's kind of the cumulative work of these groups for the board then to take a look at and see what needs to be adjusted, what's missing, are we liking where we finally landed on the metrics. So I expect that to be a great, robust conversation during our retreat. With that kind of covers it. So go ahead.
It'd be
Please.
great for this strategic planning committee to have recommendation at the board retreat that we support. So do you have revised metrics that we could walk through today so we can maybe be aligned, or if we're not aligned, know that?
I think that we're still not quite there, but I'll ask Chris or David to chime in if you've got additional feedback.
I just think that my goal was that at this meeting, we kind of have, hey, here's the framework. We're pretty much there. We kind of agree on the metrics, and then we'll refine it at the board meeting. But I feel awkward to go to the board meeting without the strategic planning committee having a firm recommendation. The timing seems awkward. So I don't know what your thoughts are on how to resolve that.
I guess what I would add is it's been incredibly helpful. So we had last week a couple joint board committees with vision teams, kind of midstream conversations. We have a number of the rest of them this week, including right after this meeting with philanthropy and engagement and the campus development working group. So I think we've been working on the metrics, and I think the challenge is if we hear back from those vision teams, our recommendation from the experts in those areas is we can't shoot for this metric, but here's the metric. So in the next 5 days, we're going to get a pretty good, clear picture from both the midstream conversations with board members on the respective committees and those vision teams. We've been working as division heads to kind of get a good sense, but it's going to adjust so much based on what those expert vision teams are saying. Again, we're going to get it this week, but it would be pretty preliminary. Chris, do you have other thoughts on the metrics piece?
Yeah, I mean, there has been some revision and some refinement, which we're certainly able to. We shared that in February, as David and President Jim have said. We're working really to collect that feedback so that we have everything we need from the board, from members looking at the strategic. What part of this survey that's gone out has kind of asked people to react to each of the different metrics and give their opinion of it, just their reaction to it. And so that'll help when we share that with division heads on Thursday. That'll be a good opportunity to see, hey, this one's not really tracking well. We might need to think about how does this fit within the plan, or this one's getting great support. This is where it is. But we've been refining those things, but we're trying to use these last meetings to try to really make sure that we have all the input necessary to move forward. That said, we do have, I mean, the draft that we had in February for you all could serve as another conversation point if that's something that you want to revisit today. If that's part of this agenda, that's something we could certainly bring up and discuss.
So Jim, I would just say, you tell me what you would like to do, but I don't feel comfortable going to the full board with recommendations that this committee hasn't yet seen. And it sounds like it's premature. So should we meet next week after you have those refined so we can either get endorsement from this group? Like I would like, Nicole's not on this morning, but I'd like Nicole to weigh in on those academic ones. I'd like Dave to make sure he weighs in on anything that's athletic, Steve on the financial plan, so that we go into the board meeting already having seen that and made any adjustments that we need to make. And I'm just thinking it's 2 weeks away. So that means it has to be, we get it by Friday. We could meet next Wednesday, or I hate to have another meeting, but at least get feedback, because I think the whole purpose of this committee is that we vet it and we feel like it's a good product, and then we can present it to the full board. So
I might just add, Madam Chair, we have been getting the individual feedback. So for example, and I'll let Jim just answer your question. For example, for philanthropy, the first question that philanthropy and campus development are answering here at 10 o'clock are the metrics for sustained annual philanthropy 40 million by 2030, 50 million by 2040, ambitious yet attainable for JMU's trajectory. So as we've had these midpoints last week, and then as we're having them this week, some of the number one questions are on the metrics and what is the feedback. So I'm adding that as you consider what you want the next step to be.
okay.
Madam Chair, may I just provide, I'm sorry to interrupt, and sorry I'm not on camera, but I'm in a moving car and I find that incredibly distracting for people to have to watch that. May I provide an alternate point of view about the retreat? I honestly have not been thinking about the retreat as a formal board meeting. I've been thinking about the retreat as an opportunity for the board to come together in candid and sometimes unstructured conversation. And so while I appreciate the chair's drive to get a recommendation from this committee, I honestly think, again, this is just my own view, but I think that retreat is a critical part of forming a final recommendation. So obviously I'll do whatever the chair thinks we should do here, but I think the board meeting is in April. I think the retreat is March 23rd, where we can kick around concerns, comments, what we support, what we yet cannot support.
Mhm. Other thoughts?
Carrie,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Mike?
No, Michael, go ahead.
No, Jack, I am after you, brother. Go ahead. You go first.
Yeah. How do you think that fits into what your plans are, Jack? That's my question.
Structurally, it is out of the norm to have a meeting where you are trying to approve a strategic plan where the strategic planning committee does not have a recommendation for the consideration of the board. So it's not a formulaic, this is what the strategic planning committee recommends, accept or reject. It's not that. It is that we have filtered through it, because that's our mandate. That's what we exist for. Before the retreat or board meeting, I don't want to get stuck on the vernacular of what's happening on March 23rd that we're calling a retreat, but it's all the board members getting together to evaluate the strategic plan. I do think, Madam Chair, that it's appropriate for us to see what is going to be put before the board in its entirety before it goes to the board. It's like if this was a budget, the finance committee would review it and filter through it before sending it to the board. That's why the committee exists. So I endorse your inclination to see what is going to be put before the board at the retreat in advance, knowing that the board is going to kick the tires on whatever is put forth. But let us do that first. This is as Jim likes, an iterative process. And part of the iterative process is for us to really kick the tires on it before it goes to the full board on the 23rd.
So Jim, knowing that we're compressed on time now, how do you suggest we move forward?
Well, we can certainly have a meeting called middle towards Wednesday or Thursday of the following week. We will be a lot closer with it by then, and we will pull that together. I know how focused I am on the metrics, and I know how focused this group is as well. In some ways, what we need to do is get real agreement about what the campus and then up through the division head said, these are what we would like to work on. And those things are still being done. The metrics kind of follow whatever the other goals were. And I know that doesn't maybe make sense to some, but we've put a lot on the table, and we just need to get really clear about which parts of the draft plan we want to focus on. We've tried to put some placeholders for metrics so that both members of the board can understand that, but also has helped for conversations with our external and internal audiences. So they've wanted to see them, but I know that we are going to start turning the dials on that. I'll use an example since I spoke about acceptance rate. I think 40% is too aggressive. That was a number that I put in as a placeholder, trying to send a message to the campus where we're going. I'm not sure where we should end with that. I really need Melinda's help with that. I need the rest of her team and Chris to really kind of take a look at that before we actually put what we think is our recommended number in front of the board committee. But we can certainly pull together a meeting for next Wednesday or Thursday to give you yet another update.
I'm just wondering if it's realistic to think in one meeting we can agree on the metrics, that we're comfortable there. That's kind of like, where are we going to be? And then all the how we're going to get there. That's a lot to digest in one meeting. And it sounds like it's getting compressed. So we'll have that. So maybe Suzanne and Jack for the board retreat, we might have consensus on the metrics, but I'm not sure that we can in one meeting get through the metrics and all of the different tactics to get, the top 10 things that we're going to do to get there, to reach those metrics. It seems like a lot for one meeting, but we can give it a try.
Terry, I appreciate the thought process of it's a lot to do in one meeting, but I think that's why I said there's no ending point to that meeting, because it is a lot to try to see it, understand it, massage it, and get it to where we feel like we're comfortable to adopt it at our April meeting. I think it would help if we did get it next week, maybe say, send it to this group on Wednesday and then have the meeting Thursday or Friday, so that this group at least has an opportunity to see the final draft that's coming before this committee, before it goes to the board, so that then the board has at least a weekend to go through it themselves, so that when everybody comes together on the 23rd, everybody has notes on or has an understanding of their areas of concern, or they want to have discussion on certain areas. Some of it may be straightforward and easy to say, yes, thumbs up, we're good with that. But some may have some problems that we need to really digest and have a heartfelt conversation about.
So I think that's a great game plan, Suzanne. It's a reality is we're compressed on time. So it's most likely that even though we give feedback, we probably won't have time to change it and have it ready for Monday. So that's just a shortcoming of not, I'll take responsibility for it. We should have scheduled those listening sessions with the committees when we were meeting in person, that would have got us ahead of that, maybe like 3 more weeks, and we would have been ready at this point. So that's what I think what we're left with. So Jim, are you okay with that plan by Wednesday?
I am.
We get something out, then we schedule
Yes.
a meeting for Thursday or Friday. And I
Yes.
mean, we can get updates today, but I think in light of this, we kind of have a game plan of, look at the metrics, agree to the metrics and kind of the direction, unless you have something that you feel like is going to be critical to share today that would influence it, or would it be better just to wait until we get the information?
I think we can wait till we get the rest of the information. I do want to say I want to say the process has been good. We've pushed the campus. I know you've heard that over and over again, but we've done a good job of keeping the process open for that feedback. And without that campus buy-in, we'll be in tough shape. And I think so far they've humored us moving as fast as we have. And again, we know that we've got the gap between the planning retreat and the actual approval. Based on all the additional board involvement we have, I'd be really stunned if there's a lot of debate over any of the key elements of the plan. There can be, but I'd be stunned because there's been a lot of opportunity for feedback on that. The actual metrics, I do believe, is where the biggest set of decisions remain.
So, and I was kind of out of pocket last week for a personal reason, but Steve, do you feel comfortable, like you're on path on the financial plan, that it's aligning with the key metrics?
Well,
You're muted.
did you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks.
I said I would hope so. I said we've got a meeting coming up just to engage that and talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. Same thing. I'm just asking for the committee chairs, like Dave, do you feel comfortable that you're like 90% where you need to be on the athletics and the plan for that? How it fits
Yeah, I
in?
think so. I think so. And again, our committee is meeting later this week to review all this as well.
Okay, super. All right. Carly, that's kind of a middle ground proposal, so we'll meet next week and have a draft game plan, so we see it before the retreat, and then we have time in the retreat to filter it again, and then come forward at the April board meeting. So I think we do need to go ahead and get our strategic planning meeting scheduled, maybe before the board meeting. David, I'm just thinking we're going to need one more before we actually come on site. I don't want to approve it on Thursday and then we're going to vote on it on the board on Friday. I think we need an extra meeting in there.
You're talking about after the board retreat, but before the April board meeting.
Yes.
Great.
After the board retreat and before the April board meeting.
Great.
And then would you mind sending out, and I think you might have it in the board portal, the most recent copy of the metrics? And then and I think too, Jim, there's going to be hundreds of things that you're going to do, but like, what are the most, for each of those metrics, what are the 1 or 2 most impactful tactics or strategies that you're going to employ to make sure we get there? I think those are going to be the most important for the board. There's probably like 2 or 3 things for each that's 80% of the work. And then there's a lot of underneath. That would be great for the board to be able to see what are the key contributors that are going to make that happen.
And that's a great observation, Terry. I think that'll be quite helpful. Thank you.
Right. Michael, is there
Question.
anything from philanthropy? The $6 billion ask from the philanthropy committee, is that good?
Oh yeah, no, it should be double. So no, Terry, I do have a question. When I think of metrics, I always think of them as measures, and you get measures and targets. But for me, measures and targets, this is a process question, Terry. For me, measures and targets, what I always want to first know is what's the objective. And so I'm always very concerned or very careful about over-indexing on metrics. Because first of all, they're incredibly difficult to create. And then second of all, they need to be able to be amended based on what we learn as we go. So here's my question.
Mhm.
When we get the report the end of next week, is it very clear in the formatting or in the organization of what we will see? Is it very clear what the objective is? And that's number one. Number two is, is how much confidence do we have regarding that we've got our objectives, that we actually have the right objectives. And by the way, it might be a different word than objectives, goals, whatever. But I'm just super curious about that part.
And I haven't, other than what we've already gotten so far, my thought would be, it would be things like, which we didn't have it in the last ones, but our out-of-state percentage would be 26%. I'm just making that up. And that would be something that we're doing to diversify our revenue and be in balance with the other state colleges. So if that's a goal to do that, then we'd have a number there. And then Jim's would have 1 or 2 tactics on how are we going to make that happen? What choices are we having to make in order to execute on that? And so I think we do need to agree on the metrics, because that kind of says what the objective is. If the objective is to, I don't know, increase our doctoral program or not go to R1 status, to in 10 years we want to stay R2, that's kind of an agreed upon outcome that we've all agreed that's an objective. And then how are we going to get there? You know, and get everybody aligned that we're not R1. So it kind of fits in. But I think the explanation along the way would be helpful, like the why behind that particular goal, particular number. And I think, Jim, you've come up with maybe, was it 12 before? We've got 4 pillars, like three measures for each pillar, no more than 12, I would think, 12 to 15 at the most.
Yes, we're on the same range.
Yeah. Michael, does that kind of get, so that's why I think it's so important to agree to the measures, because that kind of says what's most important. If the philanthropy campaign is going to be X dollars, why do we need X dollars? And it's what are all the things that we're intending to do that we're going to have that money in order to execute. So I think, Jim, if we lay it out that way, it'll be very clear. Here's the pillars, here are the key metrics, and here's the top 2 or 3 things that we're going to do to get there and the timing of those. I think that's what Michael, if we get a big narrative, it'll be hard to digest. So being able to link all that very clearly in the plan will be helpful.
I'll look forward to seeing what I receive, and then I'll ask more questions.
David, do you feel like you've got kind of a good layout that would answer Michael's question?
Absolutely.
Okay. And Chris?
We'll be ready.
I'm looking at Chris too, because you're probably the brains behind the layout to make sure we don't get like a lot of.
We're actually working on we've already started working on kind of the next iteration, and it actually follows this very closely, where it's what are the metrics, how do they align with the pillars, and then what are the strategies that fit. And that is where some of the adjustments are being done that we hope to share with the division heads on Monday, or actually on Thursday. To kind of start to think about this new, just a revised structure that aligns more with what you're saying. So we're definitely, our thinking is in alignment with what you're asking for.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that by next Wednesday, you'll have things wrapped up. We'll get a copy of that, and then we'll have a meeting probably Thursday or Friday to walk through it, so that we feel comfortable as a committee that, you know, it's not done, because there'll always be adjustments, but that we feel comfortable with the recommendations that we've made are in line. So what I don't want to have happen is at the full board retreat, Steve's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Or Michael's like, oh my gosh, how are we going to get to $6 million or 10 million or whatever it is? And so we're all kind of like, yeah, this seems reasonable. I feel comfortable with it. Or if it's not, we can make changes so that we go into that board retreat with kind of our best thought process going forward. I'm looking around. Anybody? Suzanne, does that seem reasonable to you?
Yes, that absolutely is fitting with the way I thought it would play out in order to get to the discussion on the 23rd.
Okay. And Carly, to your point, there'll be more changes, I'm sure, but I think it'll be refinements and not wholesale changes after that point.
Yes.
You're comfortable with that too?
I am. I want to raise one issue, if I may, and certainly this has been a very robust and disciplined process, as reflected in the summary decision of how we're going to lay this out. I do think that when we're dealing with, when any organization, including this one, is dealing with big strategic choices, which is what we're dealing with now, it's also important to step back. And I think a retreat is a good place to do some stepping back and say, what are we missing? And while this may not be the time to raise it, a nagging concern in the back of my mind for some time now has been that one of the things we're missing is a competitive analysis. So you may remember at the last retreat, we got a SWOT, and one of our observations, while that SWOT was incredibly useful and insightful, it was mostly a SWOT of internal stakeholders. In other words, it was the point of view of staff, students, etc. This strategy has been tested so far against or with people who are invested in the institution. Employers who hire our students, donors who invest in our institution, alumni who want to feel great about their degree. Whatever strategy JMU deploys going forward, we're going to have a moment where our competitive institutions are going to react. And I don't think we know what they're going to do. So, for example, let's just say that we agree that we're going to start building residence halls and we're going to increase our room and board by 8 to 10% a year for the next 10 years. I think that's about what the financial analysis says. What do we think happens? What do we think our competitors do? What do we think parents who might have previously chosen to apply and now say it's too much? In other words, I feel as though this has been a very thorough look by people who care about this institution. And there are a whole bunch of people out there who care about other institutions and who have competitive alternatives to coming to JMU and applying to JMU. And so I just feel like we're missing that lens. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that lens has been considered very carefully. I don't know what the answer to that is, but for example, I do think we saw a competitive assessment of us versus other institutions with regard to how much housing we have. That was a really telling analysis because it said we're really far behind. And so it would be useful, I think, to have an outside in, a real outside in perspective on what our intended moves will look like as against a competitive set.
It's a good point. I do think, Jim, we could add a paragraph in there or something that would address the points that Carly's making, not just the other institutions, but also, how we think the legislative branch will support or not support our request based on other needs in the Commonwealth. So that would be helpful to add in. Chris, is that something that you've already got planned in there, or is it something that we could add?
We can certainly add something. We've done in terms of refining metrics and considering the metrics, we've looked at our peer institutions and other places around the state to look at where this change puts us in that sense. So maybe not comprehensively, Carly, what you're discussing, but certainly in terms of when we're thinking about our metrics, we've been looking at it from our peer set and from other institutions that we may compete against or be working in tandem with. But we can certainly put some language in there that talks about how this works. I was thinking as happening, President Jim, I know that a lot of these conversations, because of the direction of the SWOT and the work that we've been doing internally with the report, but I would imagine that through your conversations with the legislature and donors and employers, and I mean, you've almost been doing your own competitive analysis, I feel like, for the last 6 months. So that I think certainly has informed some of the material that you see in the plan itself, whether it's not a formal analysis, but I was just thinking about all that you've talked about from your various conversations and how that has helped inform some of the elements that we feel like are differentiators. That would be another area of information we've used.
What I'm hearing, first of all, this has been robust feedback. Just made a note to myself as I'm kind of coming up with a grid that Terry was kind of prescribing or suggesting for laying all this out. I see another column on the far right that's really around risk assessment, and I think that embraces I think what Carly's going with what she was saying and some of the other feedback. And we create a box in an area for, here's some of the risks and here's what we make of it. But I think maybe that kind of bucket might help show, and the board will have an opportunity then to challenge my team's assessment. You'd say, okay, here's where we see for average room rates, for example. Here's what we think we'll need to raise room rates to. What could be the downside? I know that when I'm on the road talking to people, and I've acknowledged that room rates are going to be up. We will just, and I know you weren't getting to this question, but I anticipate lots of different room rates, getting more comfortable differentiating for what they get. And then we need to make sure we have the financial aid programs to make sure that people can still afford them. So
I think, Carly, that's what Beth Olander has asked as well. What are the risks and the threats, and we identify those. Is there anything else that we're missing that that others felt like, as they've looked at this, we need to make sure we have addressed for next week? No? Okay, well, I think we got a game plan then. Sounds like it's going to be compressed, but I'm confident that you guys will get it all together and we'll figure it all out. And we'll have a really productive next session. I would like to say we'll get it 24 hours before we have a meeting, so we all have time to digest it and come to the meeting maybe succinctly. I'll work with you on an agenda, Jim, so we can just hit, are we agreeing on the metrics? What ones do we have questions about? And then maybe specifically each committee chair that has that area of expertise, make sure they weigh in on them. You will have had all your listening sessions by then. And
Terry, I apologize. May I raise one other point? I'm sorry to be the skunk at the picnic here today.
sure.
With regard to the competitive set, I do think it would be extremely useful to understand the decision-making process and the alternatives that were considered and rejected with regard to the partner in the campus development plan. And I say that because we have had conversations with one development partner, and only one. And I really don't have the information to understand, are there alternatives? If so, what are they? If so, why were they rejected? In other words, why this partner for this project? I think understanding that competitive set and the decision-making process is part of our due diligence on this whole strategy and part of our fiduciary duty, honestly.
I think it'll be important, Jim, maybe we could outline this as what's the state of Virginia's requirement for vendor selection? And then how does what we've already done fit into that? And what's the process going forward? I think.
yeah. If I might, so we haven't selected a partner yet.
I just want to remind that we're on live stream as well.
Yeah. So we have not selected a partner. Sasaki has contracted with additional resources with the development company we've been hearing from and working with in service of the broader campus master plan. There'll be a separate procurement process if we decide that we'd like to explore a P3 model. I'll say that Jack White had recommended an attorney that is, if he wasn't in the room when it happened, in terms of when the law was written, he has done this all over the Commonwealth. I've followed up and had that conversation, and we are looking to secure his services to help us with this whole evaluation process, tell us how we go through it. He's done the UVA, I think he's been at George Mason, and he's been at William and Mary, so there's lots of expertise. It's my inclination, I haven't had a chance to talk to the rector yet, but it's my intention either bring him in by Zoom or have him come to the retreat just to kind of walk us through kind of how we go through it. And we won't be, when we get to the retreat and when we get to the April board meeting, we will be, I've got some notes on my computer if I took it. We're going to lay out all of the things that what the adoption of a campus development plan does and doesn't do. It's really about the vision, and I've got some other specifics, but it is not a decision to start building anything. It's just saying, directing me how to move forward. And then when it comes down to actually building something and how we build it, the board will be brought back in to evaluate that.
That's helpful. So
When
you,
you answer, real quick, when you answer what Carly is asking, it'll be important to emphasize that that JMU is aware that Virginia does not sole source, and that it's going to abide by all of the protocols for a competitive process, right?
100%.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not that familiar with it, but I know there must be a state standard process for
There
select
is.
that we've used on other processes. So it'd be helpful to have that outlined.
Okay.
Polly, does that answer your question with what we'll outline going forward?
Yes, ma'am.
Sounds good. All right, well, anything else for today? I think in light of all those comments, I don't know that if we need a work update on the vision teams, I think we'll get the document next week. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes.
Everybody? All right, well, thank you so much for the time. I know we're a little behind on where we thought we would be, but that's okay. We'll get the information. It's going to be solid. You've done a great job of bringing all the people in. But I don't know if Bethany is still on. I can't see everybody, but my thanks to everybody that has been getting all the input from the different committees and people on campus, so that it's been pretty inclusive. Jim, any closing comments other than we hope the women's basketball team wins? What time are they playing?
We play at 1 o'clock Central Time, so I think 2 o'clock Eastern. It's on ESPN Plus. You're going to be taking on Troy. Not getting ahead of myself, but there would be some nice symmetry to know that we won the Sun Belt Football Championship by beating Troy, and we won the Sun Belt Women's Tournament by beating Troy. So what can I say but go Dukes?
The girls that looked great yesterday.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the scores, almost 30-point spreads, 25 to 30-point spreads on both games. They are quite a presence on the court.
That's awesome. Suzanne, does this kind of fit in with what your game plan is for the retreat, you and Jack? I just want to make sure.
Yes, I think that it would be important maybe if Jack and I could have a conversation with Jim and David next week as well, to make sure that we're ready to go on Monday, and who's coming and all of that good information.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great week, and sorry to add another meeting to your calendar. I wish that we would have had this ready for today, but we'll talk next week. Thanks for all the work that you're doing. It's going to be great.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.